I'm Faiz Shakir.
And I'm Amanda Litman. Our guest this week on Battleground is Jamal Raad, co-founder and executive director of Evergreen Action.
Jamal Raad, welcome to Battleground. Jamal, why don't you explain who you are to our audience?
My first job out of college was working on Jeff Merkley's campaign for the U.S. Senate in 2008. Later, I was communications press secretary for Senator Merkley in D.C., where I knew Faiz and worked on issues like the Employment Non-Discrimination Act and filibuster reform. Since then, I've been working for Governor Jay Inslee. I did his reelect in 2016 and worked on his climate-focused presidential campaign to 2019. And since then, I've started with a few of the folks from the Inslee campaign, a climate-focused political policy and advocacy shop named Evergreen Action, and I'm its co-founder and executive director.
Well, let's start right there and let's get into it. Jamal, there's obviously an ongoing debate around climate. I've heard a number of progressives say no climate, no deal in reference to the infrastructure bill. I guess I start from a position of if there's no climate, no deal, and I agree with that. What is the climate and what is the deal? What is the climate deal that we need to get to?
When Ed Markey a few weeks ago tweeted no climate, no deal, our partners the Sunrise Movement and us quickly bought NOCLIMATENODEAL.com and used it as a organizing tool to both catalog the senators that have said similar statements and highlight their efforts, and then give folks an opportunity to reach out to their members of Congress to urge them to also say no climate, no deal. So I do want to give a little plug for NOCLIMATENODEAL.com. But yes, it is incumbent upon us as climate advocates to communicate what does need to be in a possible reconciliation bill to meet the moment and do what the science demands. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be able to get some really big things done in the reconciliation bill. What we're hearing is that there will be something akin to a clean electricity standard, 100% clean electricity by 2035, which is kind of the real core piece in the Biden climate agenda. We're going to see hundreds of billions of dollars in clean energy tax incentives, which are pretty crucial to ramping up renewables. And we're going to see a civilian climate corps, which is something that the youth climate movement has been really excited about. It'll create good paying jobs doing work in their communities, but also create a pipeline of talented folks that are trained to do these clean energy jobs of the future, which I'm really excited about. That's not all that needs to get done. One thing that I haven't heard is in it that does need to be in there is fulfilling Biden's commitment to get rid of all fossil fuel subsidies. If we are discussing paying for this, it should be a no-brainer to get rid of all fossil fuel subsidies. So anyways, that's quick, long, the short of it of what we kind of need to see coming out of this bill.
What's the line? At what point is it not enough climate, no deal?
It's actually talking about concrete emissions reductions. And it's are we meeting our environmental justice commitments that we made in the campaign last year? 40% of the investment going to communities, Black, Brown, Indigenous communities that have been hit first and worst by this crisis, that have borne the brunt of pollution, and their communities have been treated like dumping grounds by fossil fuel companies.
We're talking about saving the planet. We have to reduce carbon emissions, and there's really kind of no other way to save the planet. Are tax credits enough to do the carbon emissions reduction that we want? Can you talk a little bit about that? Why we as a progressive community focus on this kind of tax credit as being so critical to it?
Yeah, the main driver of climate policy for decades was a carbon tax or a cap and trade system that were holistic, system-wide approaches to defeating the climate crisis. That was Waxman-Markey, the climate approach that we took a dozen years ago. It failed, and we've tried making progress in states on those issues, and we haven't made much progress. I think that there's been a shift in both the policy and politics around climate in the last few years. On the policy, it is that we are now taking a sector-by-sector approach to taking on carbon emissions. There are three major drivers of carbon emissions: our electricity sector, our buildings, our homes and our commercial buildings, and our transportation sector. And so we are taking an investment and standards approach to decarbonizing each of these most polluting sectors of our economy. The main being the clean electricity standard, the idea that we need to get to 80% clean by 2030, 100% clean by 2035. And if we clean up our electricity sector and then make our transportation sector and our building sector run on that clean grid, then we can get a lot of the way there, if not the whole way there, on meeting some of the near-term carbon reduction targets.
We are trying to build a market-based approach that would incentivize the direction of this. And obviously, we want it to be, in some sense, mutually beneficial to all parties, that we want to move towards a clean energy economy where the business community and consumers all feel like, hey, this is the right way to go. But the concern would be that you don't get there fast enough, that the climate hinges on us creating tax credits, incentives to move in this direction. But what happens if that isn't enough?
I get a question all the time, like, what's the most important thing here on climate? What issue? Is it the tax credits? Is it the standard? Is it the Civilian Climate Corps? Is it executive action? And I tell everyone this, we are too late in the process that we can just do one thing and solve this. We have to do them all, and even then, we're just minimizing the worst impacts of climate change. We need to take an all of the above climate policy approach. We don't have the luxury of choosing. We need to kind of see what sticks. We don't know what will pass muster with the courts. We don't know what it will eventually be politically sustaining. Those are all guesses. And so we need, in this kind of crucial moment right now, while we have control of Congress that is fragile, while we have the executive, we need to be all systems go on, frankly, everything.
Why has this fallen by the wayside for the Democratic Party for so long, up until the last couple of years?
Well, I do think that part of the story of the last couple of years is climate's rising prominence within the Progressive Coalition and the Democratic Party as far as as an important issue. We've seen the polling that it's risen up there with healthcare as a top issue for Democrats. We've seen the rise of groups like the Sunrise Movement and youth climate strikers really bring this to the fore. But we've also seen the actual effects of climate change now visceral in people's lives. I'm here in Seattle, where we had the hottest temperatures ever a couple weeks ago, 108 degrees in the city of Seattle, a city that only 42% of homes have air conditioners. We weren't built for this, nor were our homes. I think that there's a real chance that this summer becomes the summer where everyone acknowledges that climate change is no longer a chart or a graph or happening in some far off future. It's happening now in communities across America.
Thanks for watching. You can get the full episode of Battleground on the Recount streaming daily, or listen to it wherever you get your podcasts.